back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm, of course, your host, Mike M3 Rosansky, coming to you on this Monday, the 22nd day of December, just 3 days away from the big day, Christmas. My hope for all of you out there is that you got all of your Christmas and other holiday shopping done, because this can be a very chaotic time of the year. This can be a very stressful time of the year, a time of the year where people will go a little bit too nuts, a little bit too chaotic when it comes to try to suffice the happiness of their loved ones. And what I will say is, it's not the dollar value, it's the thought behind the gift that you're presenting your family member, whether it's a parent, sibling, relative, brother-in-law in my case, showing that you put a little bit of effort in, a little bit of care into it, showing them how much they mean to you on this holiday. That's what matters, or at least that's what should matter, because you see all the people going nuts out there, and it took me 20 extra minutes to get here today because of traffic down here in Cherry Hill. As most of you know, I work at Amazon, and that's been chaotic over the last month and a half. So believe me, I understand with all of the chaos, but don't drive yourself completely nuts. The chaos that I do love, the chaos that I do support, though, is what is going on in the NFL right now. Because there are a lot of people out there that are unhappy. There are a lot of people that are not pleased about this NFL season. The fact that we don't have one dominant alpha dog team, that we don't have that one team everyone's chasing after. The fact that we have a postseason that's going to be without Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, a postseason that's going to be without Joe Burrow and the Bengals. But me, personally, I love what I'm seeing here. The fact that we're heading into the final 2 weeks of this NFL season with still so much up for grabs. When you look at the AFC, the fact that you only have 2 playoff spots clinched, and you still have 3 teams that could potentially, 4 actually, that could be the number 1 overall seed between Denver, New England, Jacksonville, Buffalo, and I guess if you want to throw the Chargers in there as well, because they still have a heartbeat when it comes to the AFC West. And then when you look at the NFC side of things, every time you turn around and you think you have things figured out, you think you know who the top team is, they suddenly go out there and lose. They have one of those losses, those excruciating losses, either to a bad team or blow a golden opportunity, such as what the Rams did last Thursday night. I mean, if the Rams don't have a deep playoff run and are knocked off in, say, wild card weekend, they're going to look back to last Thursday as the moment where they kicked themselves in the ass, the moment where they let a dead team off the mat and stole their golden opportunity from them. Even without Devontae Adams, they had the Seattle Seahawks dead to rights. Entering the fourth quarter, up by 16, Sam Darnold had committed a couple of turnovers. They're running the ball pretty well. Puka Nacua couldn't be stopped, even with all the chaos he's got going on in his personal life right now. He was a man on a mission on Thursday night. Stafford looking like he was about to seal up an MVP award. And then you just have one of the more chaotic fourth quarters that you're going to find. Started off by the Rashid punt return. Even then, you're like, all right, they get it back within a one-score game there. Darnold connects with Kupp for the 2-point conversion. But then you get a wide-open touchdown to A.J. Barner to bring them within 2. Before one of the wackiest 2-point conversions that you're ever going to see. We're watching the game live. You thought Sam Darnold had missed Charbonnet for a forward throw. And we go to replay and you see that it was actually a backwards pass that got deflected off of a defender, keeping the ball alive. And I don't know whether you want to give Charbonnet credit for instincts or just say it was dumb luck, because if that ball had stopped rolling, the referees would have blown the whistle and declared it a dead ball. Charbonnet just happened to be standing right there, picked the ball up in the end zone, and it counted as a 2-point conversion. Now, you know what's going to happen, unfortunately. Something like that is going to be reviewed during the off season, and they're going to make some kind of rule change or vote on some kind of rule change along the way there. But what looked like it was going to be a blowout and a disappointing loss for the Seahawks actually turned into one of the great comeback victories of the season. Even after them giving up a go-ahead touchdown in overtime, they marched right down the field for a score in their own right. And it was the only decision that McDonald could make, going for the 2-point conversion to try to win the game, because a tie does them nothing there. And with how much time was left in overtime, I do believe that if they just went for the extra point, these teams would have finished in a 37-all tie. But then you get the game-winning 2-point conversion that keeps their chances at not just the NFC West, but also the 1 seed alive. And that right there is one of those where the Rams, like I said, are going to be kicking themselves if they don't get home field advantage, if they don't get that first round bye and get eliminated early in this postseason. A postseason and the NFC side of things were really, you could make an argument about anyone on the NFC, say that, oh, I believe they're the top team. I believe that they're a team that could go on a deep run and get to the Super Bowl. And I don't know how anyone can argue against you or say that you're wrong when all of these teams have flaws. And Sam Darnold has been very mistake-prone, taking steps back over the last month. The Rams, every time they've had the chance to seize the opportunity, they've let it get away from them, and now currently sit here as the 5 seed in the NFC. Directly behind them, albeit they haven't played Monday Night Football yet, you've got the 49ers, who are missing people all over their defense, yet still Robert Saleh has coached up that unit well enough to support an offense that is at full strength and fully healthy right now. Brock Purdy has come back from the toe injury, played really well. Then you've got the Philadelphia Eagles, who survived their matchup against the Commanders on Saturday night, but it still feels like there's some kind of missing ingredient here when it comes to the Eagles that you can't quite put your finger on, whether it be their lack of commitment at times to the ground game, or how it seems like there's not a good connection with Jalen Hurts and either A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith on a weekly basis. I've said before, I think that team looks like a team that has three separate offenses for their three pieces, Barkley, Brown, and Smith, and they kind of play tag rather than being a cohesive unit and fit plays in where any one of them could be the option on that given play. I mean, who knows? Maybe this wacky rumor of Cooper DeCine dating WWE legend Nikki Bella could be that extra oomph that gets them going, kind of like how Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce did for the Chiefs years back. But they seem like a team that has just not seemed right all year long. We're talking about a team with 10 victories, is the defending Super Bowl champions, and we still have so many questions behind them. And then there's the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, who I still sit here today and play a tug-of-war matchup on whether they're really, really good or really, really lucky. Or maybe it's just both. Maybe it's a combination of things where they've got so many young, talented players, but now they got the coach that can drag that out of them. Now they've got the coach that in Ben Johnson was the missing ingredient all along, a coach that will bring out the best in Caleb Williams, that can get this offense, even when they're missing wide receivers, even when they're without Roma Doomsday, can survive games at home against division rivals. But even that is a game where you look at on Saturday night and say, how do you let that one go? Yeah, the Packers were without Jordan Love for the second half of this game after he got concussed, and we'll see what his availability is moving forward. But you're up by 10 points with just a couple of minutes to go, and so many things had to go right for the Bears to win this game. Beyond just Cairo Santos hitting the field goal that got this within a one-score game, the onside kick has become almost an impossibility in today's NFL. And still, for them to recover it and get that second chance, get that final opportunity against a Packers defense that had no pass rush whatsoever. You're clearly seeing what they're like without Micah Parsons. Any form of a rush against Caleb Williams was a blitz on Saturday night. And still he hits Jade Walker in the back right corner of the end zone for the game-tying touchdown. Once this went to overtime, you just had to feel that this was another one of those Bears nights, that this was going to be another moment for them in a year that they've had so many moments go their way, so many things go right for them. And they get another one of those with Malik Willis fumbling the snap on 4th and 1. Just a couple of plays later, Williams is hitting DJ Moore for that long touchdown to seal this game. And yeah, you want to give them credit for winning these games, but 6 times this season, they've been trailing with 2 minutes to go in the game. And so many of these, whether it be against the Bengals or against the Giants, have been of those improbable feels where you're like, come on, this can't keep happening for one team. You can't keep having moment after moment after moment like this. So while the NFC West teams all have their flaws, and the Eagles at times are their own worst enemy, the Bears, they keep finding new creative ways to win. And now I think they've more or less sealed up the NFC North, especially when you take into consideration not just having a game and a half lead over the Packers, but what's going to be Jordan Love's availability going into this Saturday night, going up against the Baltimore Ravens, who, yeah, they'll probably be on a backup quarterback as well if Lamar Jackson's back is still a problem. But you're without Love, you're already without Kraft, and now Micah Parsons. I mean, at some point, having this many injuries has to take its toll on a team. The only thing that is keeping the Packers afloat right now is the fact that the Lions have gotten into a bad way, have gotten into a rut that they seemingly can't get out of. Get to them in a few minutes. And then you've got the messy situation that is going on in the NFC South. Whereas if the Bears are the best story of the NFC side of things, you've got to put the Panthers right up there as a close second. Because I never thought I would be sitting here 3 days before Christmas, entering week 17, and talking about the Panthers as a viable team in the NFC postseason. Not before this season, not during this season. I gave them credit because they were playing well. You were getting a good year out of Bryce Young. But let's face it, a lot of this is based on the failures of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The fact that Baker Mayfield has been mistake-prone recently. And there's no excuse to be made as far as injuries are concerned because they have Mike Evans back. They have Jalen McMahon back. You have Chris Godwin back. They have their full deck of cards right now. And still they can't get out of their own way, dropping a home game to the Panthers yesterday afternoon. The only saving grace that they have is that division. They can't look back on the wild card as an option. It does help that they've got a more or less patsy opponent this coming Sunday going up against the Miami Dolphins, who are going to be running a 7th round draft pick out there at quarterback. And they get to play the Panthers again in week 18. But there is no excuse for where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have put themselves in. They should have locked up this division a long time ago. They were, 6-2 at one point? And now they've lost 6 of their last 7 games, putting them in a spot where they not only need to win their games, but get a little bit of help in the process here. So it is a very ugly spot that the Buccaneers have put themselves in, but a spot as a football fan you really have to cherish, you really have to enjoy. I think this could potentially, and I haven't looked up all the matchups yet, set us up for a position where we go into week 18 and Panthers-Buccaneers being a winner-take-all game could be the Sunday night football game that week. But still, with 2 weeks left to go in this season, you have so much up for grabs on the NFC side of things. Division titles, seeding, and seeding is going to be of the utmost importance, not just when it comes to getting home games, but also getting that one first-round bye, especially if you're in the case of teams like the Rams or the Packers, who are more or less knocked themselves out of that position. Now they're just hoping to hold on and make the playoffs. And you're a team like them that is dealing with so many injury concerns. You would much rather have to only win 3 games rather than 4 to get to the ultimate destination, get to the Super Bowl 7 weeks from now. But I don't know how, unless you're a fan of one of these teams, if you're just a diehard football fan like I am, whose team's out of the mix, how you could ask for anything better than what the NFL has provided us. It is the ultimate Christmas gift heading into week 17 that we have so much left undecided on this season. And I'll get to more of that as we move on here, give you some thoughts on the AFC side of things, where they've got a lot of chaos in their own right with the remainder of this season, mixing some thoughts on the college football playoff over the weekend, some thoughts on the Knicks, some thoughts on the Mets and the Yankees. So there's a lot I want to get to over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Glad you guys could join me this week. And as I tell you each and every single week at this time, please sit back, relax, help put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
It has taken till week 17, but I think people are starting to finally start taking the Jacksonville Jaguars as a serious team, as a team that is a legitimate, real threat to come out of the AFC. For so long, every time something went wrong for the Jacksonville Jaguars this season, people would use as a crutch the introductory press conference for their head coach, Liam Cohen, back in the spring, with how kind of goofy and awkward he came off as. But right now, he's the one laughing back at all of us because he's the one that has finally cracked the code. He's the one that is finally getting the best out of Trevor Lawrence, where Trevor Lawrence the last month and a half is starting to look like the guy that we expected him to be coming out of Clemson, leading the Jaguars to an 11-4 record, legitimately putting himself in the MVP conversation. Now, I do think that the frontrunners for that are still Matthew Stafford and Josh Allen. But the way that he has played in the last 6 games, leading the Jaguars to a now 6-game winning streak. They're going out there, not just winning games, but they're kicking their opposition's ass, averaging over 30 points a game. They're outscoring the opposition 205-92 in the last 6 games. And in the last 2 weeks in particular, and I know last week he was going up against the Jets, but Trevor Lawrence has 10 touchdowns in his last 2 games and went out there and picked apart the best defense in the NFL, arguably, yesterday in the Denver Broncos, especially in that second half after it was tied up 17-all. He was capitalizing on all of Bo Nix's mistakes, doing so with guys that you wouldn't necessarily consider brand names. And I can't say that a lot of people have ever heard of Parker Washington before yesterday. Then Bo Nix makes 2 turnovers in the second half. By the time he threw the interception, you could tell the game was pretty much over. And maybe a loss like that is one of those things that wakes the Broncos up. Maybe they were either reading their own press clippings too much or being a little too fortunate based on the Chiefs' failures this year and thinking that the West was all but cinched up, but they still have some work to do. Yeah, they get a kind of cupcake on Christmas night against the Chiefs, but then they got to play the Chargers again in Week 18, and the Chargers are sitting right there behind them for the division at 11 wins. I mean, think about it. We're going to have multiple teams in the AFC side of things that have 11 victories or are playing on Wild Card Weekend, as well as playing road games on Wild Card Weekend. That's how crazy this conference is right now, with the Jaguars at 11-4. You got the Texans at 10-5 and breathing down the Jaguars' neck for that division title. You got the Chargers at 11 wins. So there's still so much up for grab when it comes to the 1 seed, the West, the South. I think we're starting to, at least my vibe is catching this, that the North might be kind of a foregone conclusion. Even though I don't necessarily love the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think their defense is a bit old and overrated, and they've gotten a lot of fortunate calls to break their way, especially yesterday when you take into account what happened at the end of that game. And while if you're a Lions fan, you can't complain too much because you were trailing by 12 at one point in that fourth quarter. And if rather than complain like you saw Aiden Hutchinson and so many other of the Lions doing yesterday, maybe you shouldn't wait till the very end and rely on some kind of miracle finish. Go into the fourth quarter with scoring more than 10 points. Maybe that's something you should be more concerned about, or be more concerned about the fact that you couldn't run the football to save your damn lives yesterday. But those calls at the end of the game, quite frankly, were bogus. And they did get the benefit of the doubt on that one pass interference penalty that continued their drive on the 4th and 2. And I thought that was the correct call there. But then what happened with 20 seconds left? It looked like you had the game-winning touchdown by Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Tesla gets called for an OPI on that play. And watching it, I'm like, I don't know if they're saying that he set the pick too far down the field, or if he intentionally collided with the defender, setting him off course there. But watching from my perspective, even as someone who's never played football at any high level in my life, that looked like a clean play. That looked like the correct way to set up a pick, and that touchdown gets wiped off the board. That of the two plays, I think, is the one, if you're a Lion fan, you could have more of a gripe with. But the second one, there was no doubt that was OPI on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, yes, it was maybe a little bit too much of a good acting job by Jalen Ramsey, but I don't know how you could argue against that one being OPI. And what hurt your cause, ironically, in having another play after that was St. Brown laddering the ball off to Jared Goff, because that took away any potential time that was left on the clock. If Amon-Ra St. Brown had gotten tackled there, and then you have the offensive pass interference penalty called, you would have still had some time left on the clock, even with them being without timeouts. With him lateraling the ball off, it took away all time that was left on the clock, and that was irreviewable. That was the end of the game there. And now, in all likelihood, Detroit, unless they win out and the Green Bay Packers lose out, are going to be sitting at home watching the postseason like you and I. But the Steelers, I think, are going to be in the playoffs, not just because of this win, but I don't know how many more punches in the gut, how many more times that we can try to force reliability on the Baltimore Ravens before we just say it's not their year. It's not going to work out for them. Even with losing Lamar Jackson to a back injury, their defense put them in position last night to win that game. They're up by 11 with 12 minutes to go. It looked like they were going to hand New England consecutive losses and put any hopes for them winning the AFC East in doubt. But Drake May, as he's done so many times this year, dragged his team back into this game, and it even got them the lead with a couple of minutes to go. But the Baltimore Ravens continue to be their own worst enemy, whether it be the fumble by Zay Flowers on their final drive of the game, committing some stupid penalties, such as some offsides penalties that they had throughout the night, or the fact that their coaching staff clearly forgot that Derrick Henry is on the team. I don't know if they were still too concerned by the fumble that he had early in the game, which he seemed to wipe that out of his memory in the second half and was beasting by the New England Patriots. But how you do not have him on the field for either of your last two possessions when the Patriots had brought it within a one-score game, and you're trying to get down the field with a backup quarterback in order to win the game is beyond me. It's beyond stupidity to not have your best player that's available for you at that moment, and probably your best player even with Lamar out there, because he has not seemed right since coming back from that hamstring injury. But you don't have him on the field and are not giving him the ball to either churn away clock or try to get you into good field position to try to win this game. Because as you know, there's only so much you can do with Tyler Huntley out there. Was beyond stupid. And you look at this Ravens team, it just doesn't make sense. I know Lamar missed a month earlier this year with the hamstring, but it does not make sense that we sit here today, coming off of week 16, with them 7-8, and going to likely miss the postseason. We've had the conversation in the past when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it time to have a conversation about changes being made in Baltimore? Is it time for change's sake? Will it be moving on from Derrick Henry? Will it be moving on from a coordinator? Hell, maybe even a breakup between them and John Harbaugh. I know that seems sacrilege, and he's one of those coaches where you say to yourself, all right, we're moving on from him. Now what? Is there any way to upgrade and move on from him? And I really don't believe that answer is yes. But something's got to change with the Baltimore Ravens. With how old and slow the Steelers looked this year, they were ripe for the picking. And Baltimore failed to capitalize on that. And in a year where you weren't going to have Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason, the AFC was never more wide open than it is right now. The Bills, they still sit in position to capitalize on that. Whereas the Baltimore Ravens, in all likelihood, are going to be sitting at home watching the postseason like you and I. Hard to debate who's the bigger disappointment, Lions or Ravens. I think you could have put a lot of money on it before the season on those two teams potentially making it to Super Bowl Sunday. And now they're going to be part of Super Bowl parties and watching the game at home, just like all of the rest of us.
I'll be back.
Before I turn my attention to college football, I think this needs to be said for anyone who is out there foolish enough to believe any of these reports or think that there is any truth behind this, the nonsense going on with the Chicago Bears. If you really for 1 second think that the Chicago Bears are going to move to Indiana, you are out of your damn mind. Where this report comes from is last Wednesday, the team president and CEO, Kevin Warren, put out a letter to fans talking about their ongoing search to build a new stadium. For a long time, there was thoughts it's going to be in Arlington Heights, Illinois, just outside of Chicago, where they'll build a dome stadium, something I think would actually piss off a lot of Bears fans because they like having an open air building, especially in the colder weather. But they've also explored the possibility of moving the search for a new stadium outside of the region, including Northwest Indiana, claiming that this is not a leverage ploy. This is not them trying to get political with the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. And you saw a response by the Illinois governor later that night pushing back on the potential move here. The NFL would never allow this kind of thing to go down. simply because they're not going to move a team out of a major market into a smaller region such as Indiana. You got to be out of your mind there. They would put a second team in Chicago before they would ever move a team out of Chicago. You're never going to see a team get moved out of a city like New York or Philadelphia or LA or Chicago. Those are your preeminent markets across not just the NFL, but the entire sports world. So to think that the Chicago Bears have any leverage here, anything behind actually moving out of the Chicago region is nuts. For them to even look at other regions is a waste of their time, is a waste of everyone's time. They're going to be the Chicago Bears. Now, they may not play directly in the city of Chicago, may be this Arlington Heights project where they're somewhat out of the city. But they will forever be the Chicago Bears. Just like even despite playing in the Meadowlands, the Jets and Giants will always be New York teams. Or playing in Arlington, the Cowboys will always be Dallas's team. So they're not going to take a team out of a major market, especially one that is as important to the history of this league as the Bears are. Over the weekend was the beginning of the college football playoff, and it was not a good weekend for someone like yours truly, who likes to support the underdog, who likes to support the little guy in professional sports, and just likes to jab it in to the man and the powers that be at any opportunity that we get. Because I was happy that the likes of Tulane and James Madison made the college football playoff. I didn't think they were going to go on any deep run, but I am of the mindset that you have to reward the underdog. You have to reward conferences being part of college football. You can't just say that a certain conference does not matter, or your existence is just here to support the big boys. And you can't reward someone like Notre Dame, who still refuses to be part of any kind of threat in that final weekend of the season, where everyone else is either in a conference title game or capable of being eligible for a conference title game, while they just sit back with their feet kicked up and think we're guaranteed an automatic buy into this thing. No. That is not something that can happen, and that's why I'm enjoying these reports coming out that there are several ADs out there that are considering pulling back on any future commitments that they have to playing Notre Dame. But for someone like me who supports the inclusion of these small schools, not a good weekend when you watch Tulane go out there and get blown out by Ole Miss, and Oregon put a beat down on James Madison. That final score can read 51-34 all at once. Oregon was never threatened by James Madison once. It was 34-6 at halftime, 48-13 midway through the third quarter. Dante Moore was essentially doing whatever he wanted to James Madison's defense, and it built up such a lead that James Madison was not able to stick to their offensive game plan, which is being one of the better ground games in the nation. And now we fall to a situation where, with their loss combined with Tulane getting beat down by Ole Miss, where these non-power conference teams are 0-4 in the college football playoff. And it's led to a lot of people with you see, it should just be best 12 teams. But there's got to be some kind of an importance to these conference title games. There's got to be some kind of an importance to these conferences that they're part of. Otherwise, they're not going to schedule games with the big boys. Even for as much money as it brings in, they're going to look and say, wait a minute, even for as much money as it potentially brings into our school, If we're not given an opportunity, if we're not given a chance to even be part of this thing at the end of the day, why are we even participating with you guys? We'd much rather be in Division 1A or the FBS, where we at least give our players the chance to compete for something rather than just be left on the outside looking in. Now, I was happy that in the case of Ole Miss that they're moving on to the second round when you consider all of the chaos and craziness that has gone on with them, with Lane Kiffin leaving them a couple of weeks ago. But now we go to the second round of this thing where you're going to bring in the top 4 seeds. And here's my problem with the college football playoff. You just gave home games to Oklahoma, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. And the home teams went 2-2 in this round. Now we move on to the second round of this, starting a week from Wednesday, where these games are going to be taking place at the bowl games, the site of what used to be known as the BCS Bowls is now the New Year's Six Bowls, with the Cotton Bowl, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, and Sugar Bowl. How is that fair to the top 4 seeds, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech, and Ohio State, that you gave home games to Texas A&M, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Alabama, but those top 4 teams don't get a home game in all of this? It should be home games in the first 2 rounds, and then when you get to the semifinals, you put it on a neutral site. Yeah, you have to play one less game to potentially win a national championship, but how is that providing some kind of an advantage, some kind of a opportunity over your opposition if you're not giving the 1 through 4 seeds at least one home game in all of this? But it does set up for some very fun, some very interesting matchups when we get into the second round. Ohio State versus Miami, Oregon, Texas Tech. Alabama, who I think the Alabama fans could calm the hell down now when it comes to their hatred or dismay with Caleb DeBoer, as his team went out there, fought back from a 17-0 deficit against Oklahoma, and now set themselves up with a New Year's Day matchup against the Heisman Trophy winner in Fernando Mendoza at the Rose Bowl, which will be followed up by a matchup at the Sugar Bowl between Ole Miss and Georgia. And these matchups on paper are very fun, look very enticing. I just hope they live up to the billing. I hope that as someone who's not as always locked in on college football, someone who's not faking fanhood of one of these teams, just wants an all-out classic out of all of them. Now, I know that's not going to be always the case. There's going to be at least one beatdown amongst the 4 of these, or one poorly played game somewhere along the way. But when it comes to deciding the ultimate champion here, I want us to look back and look at this playoff and say, damn, that team went through a gauntlet to get the job done here. Right now, much like the NFL playoffs, you really can't look at one team and say they're definitively better than the rest, because all of these teams have flaws, and on the right day or night could be picked off by seemingly anyone left in the field.
I'll be back.
I am all for someone trying something new, trying something creative, trying something unique, because that's where, in not just sports, but in life, some of the greatest creations have come from. Some of the most interesting, some of the most successful things in the world have been coming from. There's always got to be a first, and you don't know until you try something out how it's going to ultimately turn out. But I still even 3 years into it, fail to see what is the significance behind the NBA Cup. What is the draw-in? What is that it brings to the table for these teams? And how does it provide any kind of advantage for the team that wins it going forward? The two teams that participate in the finals of this will have an 83rd game on their schedule, and it technically doesn't count for anything because only the semifinals count on their overall record, and the finals is more or less the equivalent of your preseason games. So I don't understand what kind of advantage it provides for your team. Now I know the team that wins it, the players get an extra $500,000, and I do like the fact that the Knicks are giving their bonus to staffers and people that wouldn't necessarily make that kind of money that work around the team and at Madison Square Garden. But what kind of advantage is winning this cup providing for the Knicks? What kind of extra incentive is it doing for them? Especially when you look at the last 2 years with the cup winner. The first cup winner was the LA Lakers. Last year you had the Milwaukee Bucks. And what do those two teams have in common? They both got knocked off in the first round of the NBA playoffs. There's got to be some kind of tie-in here for the team that wins it when it comes to the NBA playoffs. Now, I don't know if you want to do something where you say, oh, they are guaranteed a spot in the NBA playoffs, because then what if you ever, heaven forbid, run into the problem where, say, the team that wins it has a bunch of injuries down the stretch? Or if you have a wacky year and a bottom portion of the league team that was probably more so looking toward competing for the first overall pick or competing for a lottery pick wins this entire team. Say you have a team that goes 35-47 winning the NBA Cup. You're going to guarantee them a playoff spot? Or maybe do you provide that team that wins this with some kind of bonus in the postseason where I don't think you would ever make it that they get all of the home games in the first round, because then that'd be screwing over the ownership and business of another team that you're going against. You want to at least give them some home games, but maybe you do something where you provide the opportunity to that team where they get to call their shot at some point in the postseason, and over the course of a 7-game series, they get 5 home games and only 2 road games in that series. Something. There's got to be some kind of tie-in to the postseason, some kind of extra bonus, because otherwise this just kind of feels like, I don't know, you're trying to force interest here. It doesn't have the same kind of pull or locking fans in to extra excitement like we did with the NHL and the 4 nations. Hell, even Major League Baseball is still struggling to garner a lot of interest when it comes to fans in the World Baseball Classic. So while it's interesting trying something out, it feels more so gimmicky rather than something of any form of importance having this NBA Cup. But hey, give the Knicks a lot of credit here for what they've done. We would have killed them if they lost the NBA Cup, or at least the media by and large part would have done so, as they have the better team than the San Antonio Spurs. And it would have been fun to see them get the chance to go up against the Thunder in that game if the Thunder had gotten past the Spurs. But the Knicks are playing some really good basketball right now. They've won 12 of their last 14 games outside of this cup. You've got this team largely healthy right now, and Mike Brown is doing things that you weren't seeing Tom Thibodeau doing, and that's expanding the usage of this roster, and not doing so by force, whether it be with injuries, as they had some guys sit out the first game after the cup dealing with some nagging issues, including Towns and Hart and McBride. But he's gotten a large part of this roster involved in this run that they've had, including the youngster Tyler Kolek, who's been essential for them coming off the bench late in some of these games. Had some big shots in the Cup final and had a go-ahead basket against the Pacers in their comeback victory last Thursday night. This team is playing so well right now that even if that discussion that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago pops back up in about a month, the thought of potentially trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo, as great as he is, I don't think I would upset the apple cart and rearrange the chairs here just to pair Giannis with Jalen Brunson. Because you would essentially have to break up this entire team. You would have to give them Karl Anthony Towns. You'd probably have to throw in there a young player, whether it be Coolidge or Deuce McBride. Probably have to throw in either one of the three of Josh Hart, Anunoby, or Mikal Bridges to make things work out contractually to match up the money going both ways here. And with how well this team is playing right now, do you really want to stir up things up and mess with the good vibe that this team has as they're second in the East, only 2 games behind the Pistons, have some winnable games coming up here. And let's face it, they're New York City's best chance at winning a championship anytime soon. All due respect to the way that the Islanders are playing right now, I don't think anyone considers them any real threat. The Rangers, they're a bunch of old men, and they don't realize that their better days are behind them. The 2 football teams are lost causes, and right now they're just trying to see who can leapfrog the other to try to get the first overall pick in the NFL draft. And then you got the baseball teams where, I'm sorry, someone wake up Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner, make them realize that it's the MLB offseason. And yes, you are allowed to make moves other than spending $2 million on bringing back Paul Blackburn to be the 26th man on your roster. And then you've got the Mets, who seem more concerned with signing former Yankees, have just signed their 3rd former Yankee reliever in the last year, with last year adding Clay Holmes, making him into a starting pitcher. Then they bring in Devin Williams. That pisses off Edwin Diaz. He leaves for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And now in the last couple of days, they signed Luke Weaver to a 2-year deal. And Luke Weaver's a good reliever. I liked him for the most part when he was with the Yankees. But you sign both of these guys at the cost of what you could have done to re-sign the best closer in all of Major League Baseball. And now you've got your owner, Steve Cohen, getting into a fight with the media and fans on social media when he, for the first time in months, puts out a reaction. Last week, when the New York Post was bringing up what the Mets' expected payroll is going to be in 2026, somewhere between $310 and $320 million, and he responds with the following, quote, "As typical, the usual idiots misinterpret a Post article on Mets payroll for 26. I can't imagine our payroll to be lower than last year. It's always hard to predict, but that would be my best guess. Payroll watchers always forget to budget for waiver claims, player movement from the minors to majors, and trade deadline acquisitions. That's how it typically works." Yeah, we know that's how it works, Steve Cohen. But you still have $45+ million left in the bank from what that report is claiming that you're going to spend this year. And in the last several weeks, you've let a lot of popular Mets go. Now, I will continue to stand by it. It was the right decision to move on from Brandon Nimmo. That's a hideous contract. Just the move that you made to get him out of here is very questionable by bringing in a worser offensive player. But you let the best closer in baseball leave over $3 million and not informing him beforehand that you were going to be signing another former all-star reliever to potentially be his setup man. So you pissed him off there. And then I know he was not the perfect player. I know that he had flaws in his game. The fact that he's not a great athlete and is a guy that will probably wind up having his better days coming up as a designated hitter. But Pete Alonso was so important to the Met fan base, was someone that Met fans gravitated to, was their homegrown guy. They don't have that same attachment to Lindor or Juan Soto, even despite them being a little bit more talented players than Alonso, as they do the attachment and love that you have for Alonso. See, it doesn't matter how great a player is. Fans will always gravitate to the homegrown guy. As great as Alex Rodriguez was, that never deterred fans from their love for Derek Jeter or Jorge Posada. Not just because they won championships here, but because they were homegrown guys. And as great as Mike Piazza was for the Mets, he put them on the map for 6 years and made them a relevant franchise, made them a competitive franchise. Nothing will ever compare to the love that Met fans had for David Wright, because he was their guy. And the Wilpons made sure of that, made sure that David Wright never played a game in anything other than a Mets uniform. Obviously, that kind of sentimentality is not as important to the Mets run by Steve Cohen and David Stearns, especially when you see them let him walk out the door and within 48 hours you sign a guy to replace him that has never played first base in his life, in Jorge Polanco. So this commentary that's coming out from Steve Cohen wanting to criticize everyone bringing up the Met payroll, they got a damn right to be critical of the way him and Stearns are running things. They got a right to be critical of the way the payroll is right now. You're coming off of a year in which you made so many moves at the deadline. You brought up a young starter in Nolan McLean that was fantastic in his 8 starts. You signed Juan frickin' Soto to a $700 million contract. And you let that all squander away post-trade deadline when you were 11 games under 500, won only 83 games, and failed to make the final postseason spot, lost out to the Cincinnati Reds, who lost on the final day of the season and provided you an opportunity while you're getting shut out by the Marlins. And then you go off and you let players go during this offseason and replace them with moves that don't quite make sense. Because if you haven't gotten younger or more talented in any of those spots, if anything, you've gotten older, you've gotten less talented offensively, and weaker at certain defensive positions. And you're going to criticize the fans coming off of a year where after you signed Soto, you challenged the fans to come to the ballpark. And they did. You had one of the more successful financial years in the 15-plus year history of Citi Field. But you haven't done anything to back up that fan support. So that's why, with the way this team looks right now, no additions or upgrades in the starting rotation, signing former Yankees to try to replace what you had in the bullpen, and being less offensively at certain positions in this lineup. If this all blows up in your face, don't be surprised if you have a ghost town coming your way in mid-May, early June at Citi Field. Because these fans and the media have every right to criticize the offseason that you've had so far. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, December 22nd, 2025. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week and remainder of your holiday season. Remember, folks, you got one life, so you might as well try to live it up and enjoy it with your friends and family this week. And I'll talk to you guys again at some point next week. Until then, Merry Christmas, everyone. Peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody. I have had enough of you. Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.